Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Eadling, and today is July 15th. Sometimes in the garden, timing is everything. In my front yard, the Asiatic lilies bloom every July. Mine are deep red, not pink, not orange, a deep, unapologetic red. And almost every year, they open right around the 4th of July. I wish I could tell you that I planned it that way. I didn't. Years ago, I tucked those bulbs into the ground and then forgot about them. Now, every summer, they put on their own little fireworks show beside the front porch. I pull into the driveway, and I see them standing there and think, there you are. Right on time. Gardens do things like that. A peony opens the week of your anniversary. The daffodils arrive on your mom's birthday. The tomatoes finally ripen the afternoon someone calls to say they're coming for dinner. You spend a lot of time in a garden planning ahead. And then, every so often, the garden reminds you that it has been keeping its own calendar all along. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1793 that the American botanist, teacher, and author Almira Hart Lincoln Phelps was born in Berlin, Connecticut, the youngest of 17 children. Her mother taught herself the natural world, and Almira learned at her side. At 24, she married Simeon Lincoln, editor of the Connecticut Mirror in Hartford. They had 3 children in quick succession. Their first son died before his first birthday. 2 years later, Almira's husband died of yellow fever. She was 30 with 2 little daughters when she accepted a teaching job at the female seminary her sister founded in Troy, New York. There she met the naturalist Amos Eaton, who showed her how to press a plant, how to identify it, how to write its name in Latin, and how to arrange her specimens so she could find them again. Before long, she knew the plants around Troy by name. But when Almira finally went into the classroom, she realized there was no botany book a beginner could understand. So she wrote one. Familiar Lectures on Botany was published in 1829. It went through 28 editions, sold over 275,000 copies, and found its way into classrooms across the United States and Canada. Almira's second marriage was to the Vermont lawyer named John Phelps. He was a widower with 6 children. They had 2 more of their own together. In 1841, they moved to Maryland, where Almira became principal of the Patapsco Female Institute. She liked to say, I am the mother of more than 100 girls. Though through her botany books, she influenced thousands more, including a quiet 14-year-old girl at Amherst Academy in 1845. Following Almira's text, Emily Dickinson began pressing flowers and labeling them with their Latin names, building a herbarium for herself with 424 specimens. Almira Hart Lincoln Phelps died in Baltimore on July 15, 1884, on her 91st birthday. A few days before, she wrote in her journal for the last time. She hadn't missed a day in 70 years. She titled it, My Farewell to the World. And it was on this day in 1811 that the English botanical illustrator Emily Stackhouse was born in Modbury, Devon, into an old Cornish family of naturalists. When she was a girl, her father inherited the family estate in Cornwall. Mild, far south, and thick with plants that grew almost nowhere else in Britain. Emily spent the rest of her life walking that land. From the age of 15, she painted every wild plant she found, always from a living plant, never from a dried specimen. In the corner of every watercolor, she wrote the English name, the Latin name, the place, and the date. And by the end of her life, she had painted more than 620 watercolors and classified nearly every species of moss in Britain. In the mid-1840s, a Cornish clergyman named Charles Alexander Johns asked Emily to illustrate a new guide to British wildflowers. Emily agreed. And in 1851, Flowers of the Field was published. It contained more than 200 of her illustrations. The book went through more than 50 editions and remained in print for a century. It taught generations of people how to know their wildflowers. But Emily's name appeared nowhere in the book. Her illustrations were marked only with 2 letters, E.S. As she got older, when her eyesight began to fail, Emily stopped painting the smallest parts of flowers. Instead, she collected specimens, sending them to the British Museum and to a neighbor building a Cornish herbarium. Before she died, she gathered all 620 watercolors and had them bound into 3 volumes, her life's work. Emily Stackhouse died in Cornwall in 1870. She was 58. For the next 125 years, people knew the illustrations. Few knew the artist. Then, in 1995, an American art dealer named Clifford Evans followed those 2 initials, E.S., back to the 3 bound volumes and back to Emily Stackhouse. At long last, the paintings were hers again. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a report published on this day, July 15th, 1897, in The Guardian, collected in Ruth Petrie's book, Notes from the Garden. Next in importance to dairy work, she placed gardening, which could easily be carried on by women in their own gardens. It was terrible in these days to see the number of splendid gardens which were allowed to go to waste. But if gardening was to pay, it must not be attended to one day and neglected the next. Mrs. Hutchings, gardener at Kew, contended that if a woman had a natural liking for her work and the necessary physical fitness, she should not be disqualified from gardening because of her sex. This year, the number of women employed at Kew was 3. Mrs. Freer, the secretary of the Swanley Horticultural College, said the public had most cordially received professional women gardeners, and if they had 20 more well-trained students, they had places for them to fill. 3 women. Just 3 women, and room for 20 more. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, A Moment in Time by Catherine Herman. At the midpoint of Garden Memoirs Week, today's book is the story of a garden 30 years in the making. Catherine Herman is one of New England's most celebrated landscape designers. But before the awards, before the design practice, there was 1 week at Hadspen House in Somerset. At the time, she had never designed a garden professionally, and she spent the entire week studying with the legendary Penelope Hobhouse in a garden cared for by Norrie and Sandra Pope. And the experience changed the way Catherine saw gardens. She said, "There was something almost alchemical about the way the borders were planted. the way colors and textures seamlessly melded into one another. Blues blending into purples, yellows fading into soft pinks, all with a graceful ease that made it appear as though the plants had naturally grown together over time. I began to see color not as a random burst, but as a tool to craft emotion, mood, and movement within a garden. Catherine went back home, bought the Pope's book called Color by Design, and called it her Bible. 30 years later, the gardens at Pepperidge Farm still carry the lessons of that week at Hadspen. A Moment in Time by Catherine Herman is the story of how one beautiful garden can change the gardener who walks through it. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1890 that the American landscape architect Florence Yock was born in Santa Ana, California. Florence designed some of California's most beautiful gardens, but the garden most people remember never existed. When David O. Selznick began filming Gone with the Wind, he needed the grounds of Terra. Not a real plantation, a believable one. Florence built it on a Hollywood back lot. The great oak trees were telephone poles dressed in fabricated foliage. The dogwood blossoms were made by the prop department. The house itself was plywood and paper mache. But when the cameras rolled, people believed it. For 40 years, Florence worked beside her partner, Lucille Council. Together, they designed more than 250 real gardens. And when a project was finished, they handed every client a typed guide explaining how to care for the garden, what to plant, when to prune, and how to keep it alive. Florence knew the difference between a garden that looked real and one that truly lived. Perhaps that's why the real gardens outlasted the movie set. As we close the show today, remember, the garden keeps its own calendar. You plant the lilies, the peonies, the daisies your grandmother loved. Then, years later, they bloom on the days that somehow matter. The 4th of July, an anniversary, the afternoon your children come home. You never planned it, but somehow the garden did. Every summer, it reminds you where you've been, who you've loved, what you've carried with you. So this week, notice what's blooming. It may have been waiting for this very moment longer than you have. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.